The hum of the server room filled the glass corridor, a cold pulse of machines in the night. Derek Cole crouched low, flashlight steady, when his beam froze on a device that didn't belong, small, blinking red like a warning in the dark. His jaw tightened. Footsteps echoed. He didn't need to look to know who it was. Sienna Lockhart, the CEO. Crimson dress like fire in the shadows. Emerald eyes narrowing on him. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice cut the silence like a blade. Derek rose slowly, calm, steady. He didn't shrink. He didn't flinch. Noticing what everyone else chooses to ignore. Her gaze lingered on him, sharp and curious. For the first time in her glass empire, the invisible janitor wasn't invisible anymore. And in that moment, everything changed. Subscribe now if this opening pulled you in. Share this video with someone who loves a story full of power and betrayal, and may your day be filled with strength and light. The night pressed heavy over Miami's shoreline, the kind of humid air that slicked glass towers until they shone like wet mirrors. Neon from Ocean Drive threw colors across Biscayne Bay, while the blue spire 48 stories of steel and tinted glass stood like a beacon just a block from the beach. At street level, palm trees shook raindrops from a passing storm. Inside, the building was almost silent, save for the hum of air conditioning and the squeak of wheels on tile as a janitor's cart rolled into the lobby. Derek Cole, 28, was young for this shift. 6 feet tall, lean but broad-shouldered, his coveralls marked him as invisible to the suits who owned the day. His hair was kept short, his jaw shadowed, his eyes dark and observant. Years of hardship had carved patience into him. He was not a dreamer anymore. He was a man with one clear goal: keep his younger sister in school. 2 years earlier, Derek had walked away from a computer science degree when bills piled too high. His mother's health collapsed, and someone had to carry the load. He promised her, and himself, that Tasha Cole, 19, bright-eyed, stubborn, a freshman at Florida International, would not drop out like he did. She had braided hair tipped with gold cuffs, a sketchbook always under her arm, and a fierce determination to design a life bigger than Liberty City. Derek worked 2 jobs so she could focus on classes. That was the deal. The night crew formed a strange family. Rafa Benitez, the shift lead, was Cuban-American, mid-40s, barrel-chested and easygoing. His laughter carried down hallways like salsa drums. Mrs. Dolores Green, nearing 60, moved with practiced grace, her bracelets jingling as she called everyone baby. Kenji Morales, 22, Puerto Rican Japanese, lanky and restless, cleaned with headphones blasting lo-fi beats. Mac Castillo, 33, Dominican, was the night guard ex-military, square-jawed, always alert but rarely unkind. And above them, rarely seen but always present, was Patrick Voss, the facility's supervisor, whose clipped emails were as warm as concrete. By midnight, Derek's route took him to the 23rd floor. The city glittered beyond wide windows, rain streaks like veins across the glass. He worked in rhythm trash, wipe, polish, losing himself in the quiet. There was comfort in routine. But tonight, something blinked wrong. A tiny amber light flickered on the server closet. Not his business. Still, Derek noticed the coupler slightly misaligned, the cable length just off. He frowned, moved on, telling himself to log it later. The elevator dinged. Out stepped Caleb Ung, 21, an intern. Thin, nervous, blazer too stiff, hair combed with precision that sweat had undone. His laptop hugged his chest like a life raft. Stress etched across his face. "Hey, sorry, do you know if the Wi-Fi's acting weird?" Caleb asked, voice cracking. Derek paused mid-mop. "Weird how?" "Packet loss, dashboard crashing. If I don't fix it before morning, my team lead." His words tumbled over each other. Derek could have ignored him. Instead, he studied the kid's panic and said, "Show me." They sat at a side table, neon washing the room in purple and green. Caleb opened his laptop. Charts lagged, queries stuttered. Derek leaned in, eyes sharp. Your joins are killing performance. Wrong data types. And this calculation move at server side, not in the viz. His fingers flew, rewriting a query, tightening filters. The dashboard snapped alive, smooth and quick. Caleb blinked. How do you even know this? Derek shrugged. I used to study this stuff. Relief flooded the intern's face, mixed with embarrassment. Thank you. What do I even say? Derek tore a sticky note, wrote in block letters, don't confuse hard with impossible. Fix one thing, then the next. He pressed it onto the laptop. Run the scheduler now, and tell the truth. You learned something at midnight. Nothing wrong with that. Caleb laughed nervously, then genuinely. His shoulders dropped, tension unwinding. For a moment he looked his age. From the doorway, Mac appeared, silent as always. His eyes flicked over the scene. Everything good here? All good, Derek answered. Caleb nodded too quickly, nearly bowing. Mac let it slide. Stay out of the closet, he warned gently. Log issues through IT. Then he moved on, presence fading like a shadow. Derek finished his floor, then rode the service elevator up to 31, the executive wing. Here, everything gleamed. Leather chairs, stocked pantries, windows that caught the city like a jewel. At the reception desk sat Harper Sloan, 26, temp worker and law student. Pale skin dotted with freckles, messy bun skewered with a pen, blazer thrown over a band tee. She had a sharp wit, often hiding kindness under sarcasm. You're the one who saved the intern, she said, chewing a cinnamon toothpick. Word had spread already. He saved himself, Derek replied. Harper arched a brow. Do you always sound like a coach? Only when someone's running. She smirked, slid him a wrapped sandwich. Take it. Don't ask why Derek accepted it carefully, gratitude in his quiet voice. Moments like that mattered. Rain thickened outside, a steady drumming. Derek logged the server anomaly on 31 through the maintenance app. Intermittent blink, possible loose coupler. He signed it with his own name. He believed in owning his words. Minutes later, Vince Alvarado, 38, a weary IT tech with polo and eye bags, passed by. Got your ticket. Appreciate it, he muttered. Their eyes met, technician, recognizing technician. By 2:30 a.m., most of the crew checked in via group chat. Rafa joking about pizza crimes, Kenji replying with haikus, Mrs. Green sending prayer hand stickers. The night shift was its own small town. Caleb returned once more, breathless, laptop open to show the fixed dashboard. It works. I even cited your note. Not as credit, more like a mantra. His grin was sheepish, but his gratitude sincere. Thanks for seeing me. Derek lifted a shoulder. Hard to miss you, kid. Name's Caleb, the intern said, almost proudly. Derek, he replied. A bridge of names built between them. When his checklist was complete, Derek signed off and parked his cart. Rafa clapped him on the shoulder. Another night, hermano. Another $1, Derek said, smiling faintly. Outside, the storm had passed. The palms dripped silver under streetlights. He took the late bus north, then walked 5 blocks through quiet streets, preferring the night air. At his apartment, the basil plant on the balcony smelled sharp and green. Inside, a pastelito waited on the counter with a note in Tasha's handwriting. Don't be mad. Love you. And another, smaller one. You're doing it, Dee. I see you. He ate standing up, washed the plate, caught his reflection in the dull mirror above the sink. Not hope direction. He set alarms, lay down, and thought of his sister at her 3D printer, of the word graduate shining like a lighthouse. Then sleep took him, the city humming outside, a young man refusing to be swallowed by it. Morning came in Miami the way it always did, sudden and bright, like someone throwing open a curtain on a stage. The storm had rinsed the streets, so Biscayne Boulevard glistened with puddles reflecting palm trees and billboards. By 9 o'clock, the blue spire was alive again, no trace of the silent halls Derek had cleaned through the night. Elevators dinged, heels clicked, coffee steamed in paper cups. The day belonged to people who rarely noticed that their towers had to be polished back into perfection before they arrived. On the 38th floor, a hush settled over a conference room packed with executives. The cause of the silence walked in with the easy confidence of someone who had spent her life being watched. Sienna Lockhart, 31, was the CEO of Lockhart and Ward Financial. She was striking in a way that was impossible to ignore. Tall, with long toned legs, and a figure that curved beneath a scarlet bodycon dress. Her hair was black and glossy, falling in waves to her shoulders, and her eyes were a piercing shade of green that could slice through excuses as quickly as they could lure investors into dangerous deals. A diamond stud glimmered at her ear, a reminder of wealth, but it was the sharpness of her smile that marked her true weapon. Sienna's reputation was well earned. She had climbed to the top of a male-dominated industry not by playing nice, but by playing better. To the press, she was the vixen of venture capital, a woman who sealed mergers in midnight clubs as easily as she shredded rivals in boardrooms. To her staff, she was both intoxicating and terrifying. There were whispers about her charm, the way she could tilt her head and make even hardened men lose their train of thought. But there were darker whispers, too, that she trusted no one, slept less than 4 hours a night, and once fired an executive for showing up late to a meeting. She herself arrived at 10 minutes behind schedule. Sienna had learned long ago that power and allure worked best as a duet. This morning she set her tablet on the glass table, heels clicking as she crossed to the head seat. The executives, mostly older men in dark suits, followed her with their eyes. Even when she said nothing, the room bent to her. "Gentlemen," she said at last, voice low and smoky, "shall we begin?" While the city's day shifted forward with billion-dollar conversations, Derek was climbing into bed. He'd managed barely 3 hours of sleep before his alarm buzzed, reminding him that Rafa needed help moving equipment from a storage unit. By afternoon, he was back in his coveralls, walking through the polished lobby past men in cufflinks. He pushed his cart toward the elevators, invisible again, but content. His life was about survival and responsibility, not glamour. On floor 27, he heard it again, that faint amber blink in a server annex. He stopped long enough to log another ticket. As he closed the door, a ripple of laughter carried down the corridor. He looked up just in time to see her. Sienna Lockhart was walking the hall with 2 assistants trailing behind her. She wore sunglasses indoors, the red dress still hugging her frame from the morning meeting. She carried herself with the rhythm of someone used to having space part for her. The assistants whispered notes, one clutching a laptop, the other balancing a tray of coffee. Sienna, however, was distracted. She noticed the janitor crouched by the annex holding a small flashlight. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you doing there?" Her voice wasn't cruel, just sharp with curiosity. Derek rose smoothly, flashlight in one hand, rag in the other. "Noticed a flicker." "Just logged it for IT," Sienna tilted her head. Sienna tilted. Up close, she saw the details, the neat hair, the steady gaze, the way he didn't flinch under her attention. She was used to men staring, stumbling, or shrinking when she spoke. This one simply answered. "Most janitors don't know what a flicker in a server means," she said, lips curving in a faint smirk. "Most servers don't lie to me," he replied quietly. Her assistants blinked, startled at his audacity. Sienna let the silence hang, amused. Then she stepped closer, just enough for her perfume something rich and floral with a sharp bite underneath to brush the air between them. "What's your name?" "Derek," he said. "Well, Derek," she purred. "Let it handle the servers. You just keep the floor shining." With that, she swept past, her heels striking like punctuation. Yet even as she moved away, she found herself glancing back. Something in his calm unsettled her, though she'd never admit it. For Derek, the encounter was just another reminder of his place. He pushed his cart onward, humming under his breath, though a part of him wondered why her words lingered. That evening, across the city in a dimly lit district near Little Havana, another story was unfolding. Tasha Cole adjusted her apron in the back room of a bar called El Canto. She was 19, slender, with braids pulled into a bun, her eyes bright but wary. She had told Derek she was tutoring classmates for extra cash. In truth, she had taken this job serving drinks, hoping to ease the burden on him. The bar's owner, Miguel Alvarez, was 50, stocky with a balding head and a gut that hung over his belt. He had a quick smile for customers and a sharp temper for staff. Years of hustling made him streetwise, and though he wasn't unkind to Tasha, his world was harsher than she realized. Miguel had lost a brother to a drunk driving accident, which made him run his bar with strict rules against overserving. Still, the clientele was rowdy. Truckers, college students, and the occasional banker blowing off steam. Tasha balanced trays with growing skill. She liked the cash tips, though she hated the way some men looked at her. Still, every time she folded bills into her pocket, she imagined handing them to Derek, easing the worry lines from his forehead. She couldn't tell him yet. He'd never allow it. Tonight, one of the bartenders, Lena Cruz, 25, Dominican-American, tall and curvy with sharp eyeliner, took Tasha under her wing. Lena had worked bars since she was 18, toughened by catcalls and long nights. She was protective of Tasha, often steering the younger girl away from grabby patrons. "Keep your tray high," Lena advised, "and don't smile too much." "Men think it's an invitation." Tasha nodded, absorbing the survival tactics. She wasn't naive, but she wasn't hardened either. A part of her still believed she could help her brother without losing herself. Back in the Blue Spire, night deepened. Derek moved between offices, polishing glass walls until they gleamed. The city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows. He thought of Tasha, of her tuition, and of the promise he'd made their mother. He didn't know she was carrying her own secret burden. Near midnight, he returned to the executive floor. This time, the office lights were still on. Through the glass walls, he glimpsed Sienna Lockhart standing alone in her corner office. The red dress was gone, replaced with a sleek black blouse tucked into a pencil skirt, but the effect was no less striking. She leaned against her desk, sipping whiskey from a short glass, her tablet glowing with numbers. For a moment, Derek almost turned away. Then the sound of frustration reached him. A sharp sigh, the glass set down harder than intended. Papers scattered. He hesitated, remembering the intern from the night before. Helping was never wrong, his sister always said. He raised a hand and tapped on the doorframe. Sienna looked up, eyes flashing green under the lamplight. "Do you need something?" "No, ma'am," he said evenly. "Just making sure you're okay." Her gaze lingered. She saw the steadiness in him again, the lack of fear. "Do I look not okay?" she asked, half a challenge. "You look like someone carrying too much weight on one shoulder," he answered softly. The remark startled her, though she hid it with a smirk. "You have opinions about more than mops, don't you?" He didn't reply, just inclined his head. After a beat, she waved him off. "Go on, then." "Floors won't clean themselves." But when Derek left, Sienna remained at the window, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. The janitor's words echoed, irritating her because they struck too close. She was used to men flattering her body, not noticing her exhaustion. And for reasons she didn't understand, that difference unsettled her more than desire ever could. By the time Derek clocked out, the storm had passed again, leaving Miami streets slick and shimmering under the moon. He boarded the early bus home, weary but steady. His thoughts drifted to Tasha, safe in her classes, or so he believed. And in the Blue Spire, Sienna Lockhart closed her office lights past 2 a.m., her reflection staring back from the glass. For the first time in months, she caught herself thinking not of rivals or mergers, but of a janitor with calm eyes who dared to answer her honestly. The next evening, Miami pulsed with its usual contradictions. The salt-heavy air warm against neon-lit streets while thunderclouds gathered out west. The Blue Spire glimmered like a shard of ocean pulled upright, its glass skin reflecting a city that never really slept. Inside, the night shift prepared as always. Derek Cole pushed his cart from the service bay with the steady rhythm of someone who had learned to make peace with routine. But tonight he carried a quiet restlessness he couldn't name. On the 31st floor, the server annex whispered with its usual hum, but Derek's trained eye caught something that made him pause. Nestled in the back panel, half hidden beneath cable bundles, was a small black device no larger than a deck of cards. Its LED pulsed faintly red every few seconds. He knew the annex well enough to recognize every port and coupler. This didn't belong. His first instinct was to ignore it, file a ticket, and keep moving. But his second instinct, the one that had once made him a promising computer science student, told him this was deliberate, not sloppy wiring, not an accident, something more. He crouched lower, pulling out his phone, considering whether to snap a picture. His reflection in the polished server door reminded him, janitors weren't supposed to notice things like this, and yet he couldn't just walk away. Behind him, heels clicked against the marble. The sound froze him more than the device did. He turned slowly, flashlight beam cutting across the hall, and saw her. Sienna Lockhart. Tonight she wore a midnight blue silk blouse tucked into tailored slacks, her hair swept back, earrings catching the light like shards of ice. She was alone, unusual for her, and carried only a tablet pressed against her hip. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between curiosity and command. "You again," she said, voice low. "Always near this room. Tell me, Derek, do you have a fascination with cables?" He straightened, pocketing his phone. "Just doing my job." Her eyes narrowed. "Your job is to mop floors, not pry into servers. And yet, every time I walk late, I find you here. Why?" For a moment, silence stretched. Then Derek answered with steady calm. "Because something doesn't add up." He gestured lightly toward the panel. "You've got equipment in there that isn't on the building's maintenance schematics. I've seen enough systems to know what doesn't belong. Sienna's assistants weren't with her tonight, so she didn't have to keep up the performance. Instead, she stepped closer, arms folded, her perfume sharp and warm at once. And you know this how? Don't tell me janitorial school covers network security. I was supposed to be finishing a degree in computer science before life got in the way," Derek replied evenly. For the first time, she faltered, just slightly, as though her carefully built image cracked at the edges. "Interesting," she murmured, almost to herself. Then, more directly, "So what do you think that little toy is doing in there?" Derek's jaw tightened. "If I had to guess, collecting information it shouldn't. Someone wants eyes where they don't belong." Her green eyes flickered, calculating. The tension between them wasn't just suspicion, it was recognition. She saw intelligence he wasn't flaunting, composure he didn't need to prove, and he saw in her not just the infamous CEO, but a woman who weighed risks like coins in her hand. Before she could press him further, the quiet was broken by a new arrival. Jordan Keller, 45, head of internal IT, came striding down the corridor. A broad man with thinning blonde hair, glasses perched on the edge of his nose, Jordan wore rumpled khakis and a company polo that strained at the buttons. He had the harried look of someone married to both his work and his stress. "Ms. Lockhart," he greeted, a little too eager. Then his eyes darted to Derek. "What's he doing here? What's he doing?" "Apparently," Sienna said coolly, "he has opinions about our servers." Jordan frowned, his skepticism sharpened by years of dismissing underlings. "With respect, ma'am, these people clean bathrooms. They don't know the first thing about data infrastructure." Derek met his gaze without blinking. "Then you might want to explain why there's an unregistered device sitting on your rack. It's not standard issue. And it's not random." Jordan's face reddened. "That's absurd." "Check it yourself," Derek cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but the certainty in it silenced further argument. Sienna's attention snapped between the two men. She enjoyed watching executives sweat, but tonight she was unsettled for different reasons. She wasn't sure whom to trust. "Jordan, schedule a full sweep. I want a report by morning." He hesitated, then nodded stiffly, brushing past Derek into the annex. Sienna lingered. "You realize," she said softly, "that if you're wrong, this makes you look like a man with too much imagination." "And if I'm right?" Derek asked. Her lips curved in something that was neither smile nor smirk. "Then you're the most dangerous janitor in Miami." The air between them thickened, the hum of the servers masking a silence that was suddenly alive with something else. Attraction? Maybe. Respect? Definitely. Neither named it aloud. Across town, Tasha pulled on her apron at El Canto Bar. The music thumped low, colored lights washing over sticky tables. She moved quickly between booths, balancing trays with practiced effort. Her mentor for the evening, Lena Cruz, shadowed her, sharp eyes watching for trouble. At one corner booth sat Raymond Ray Dixon, late 30s, a truck driver who'd made El Canto his stop whenever he was in Miami. Thick-set with a shaved head and tattoos creeping up his neck, Ray had a reputation for loud jokes and heavy tips, but also for temper. Tonight he was already half drunk, flirting clumsily with Tasha. She laughed politely, sliding his drink across the table, then excused herself quickly. Lena intercepted her near the bar. "Careful with him. Ray's fine until he's not. Stick close to me." Tasha nodded, grateful. She was tough, but she wasn't reckless. She told herself the money was worth it. Tuition payments didn't care how she earned the cash. Still, as she stuffed a $10 tip into her pocket, a pang of guilt struck her. If Derek ever found out, he'd march her out of here in a second. She wasn't ready for that fight. Back in the tower, Jordan emerged from the annex, sweat beading his brow. "Nothing unusual," he reported tersely. "Probably a loose coupler." Sienna's eyes bored into him. "I'll expect that report in detail by 9. Then she turned to Derek. "You can go back to your rounds." He inclined his head, but as he pushed his cart away, he caught the faintest trace of hesitation in her gaze. She didn't believe Jordan any more than he did. Later that night, as Derek cleaned the break room, Sienna appeared again, alone. She leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. "You didn't back down," she said finally. "Wasn't anything to back down from," he replied. "Most people in this building trip over themselves to agree with me," she murmured. "You don't." "Why?" "Because I don't work for you," he said simply. "I work for my family. That's what matters." For once, she had no ready retort. Instead, a slow smile spread across her lips, not mocking, but intrigued. "Maybe you're the one person in this tower who actually means what he says." The hum between them returned, stronger now, equal parts challenge and curiosity. Sienna stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Just remember, Derek, curiosity is dangerous. In this building, it can kill careers." He met her gaze without flinching. "Good thing I don't have one." For the first time in a long time, Sienna laughed, a low, genuine laugh that surprised even her. She left without another word, heels echoing down the hall, but her mind replayed the moment long after. And Derek, returning to his cart, realized he was in deeper than he ever meant to be. The servers weren't the only thing hiding secrets. Miami's skyline glittered under a veil of humidity as night pressed down, the city alive with music and headlights even after midnight. Inside the blue spire, the upper floors glowed like lanterns against the darkness. Derek Cole wheeled his cart into the 38th floor corridor, moving with his usual quiet efficiency, but his mind replayed the image of the strange device in the server annex. He couldn't shake it, and he couldn't ignore the way Sienna Lockhart had looked at him, half suspicion, half something else. In a glass-walled conference room across the hall, a gathering buzzed with tension. At the head of the table stood Ethan Ward, 35, the company's COO. Ethan was the kind of man who fit neatly into magazine spreads about rising stars. Tall and fit, with sandy blonde hair styled to precision, a tan that suggested more golf course than sunlight, and a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Derek's yearly rent. His smile was charming, but his eyes were pale blue and cold, the kind that calculated before they welcomed. Years ago, Ethan and Sienna had been inseparable lovers, partners, the golden duo of Lockhart and Ward, but ambition had eroded trust. Now, his gaze held no warmth when it landed on her. Around the table sat department heads. Jordan Keller from IT, his face flushed as if he'd run a mile. Diana Brooks, the head of PR, a compact woman in her 40s with sharp features softened by tired eyes, always balancing crisis management with an aging mother at home. And Victor Hale, finance director, bald with wire-rimmed glasses, a man who prided himself on caution, yet often leaned toward whoever promised profit. Sienna entered late, striking in a black sheath dress, her hair pinned back, her expression unreadable. "Why the urgency?" she asked, voice smooth but firm. Ethan clicked a remote. On the wall, grainy security footage appeared. It showed Derek in the server annex, crouched near the racks, flashlight in hand. "This," Ethan said, letting the image hang. "Our janitor, tampering with critical systems." "Tonight," the room murmured. Jordan adjusted his glasses, sweat dotting his forehead. I saw nothing when I inspected earlier." "That's because you weren't looking hard enough," Ethan snapped. Then, turning to Sienna, his tone softened into persuasion. "We've uncovered a breach, and now we know who's responsible." At that moment, the doors opened, and Mac Castillo, the night guard, entered with Derek at his side. Mac's face was set in professional neutrality, but his eyes betrayed unease. "Found him near the annex again," Mac said evenly, though the hesitation in his voice hinted he wasn't convinced of Derek's guilt. Derek stood tall despite the uniform marking him as invisible. His gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Sienna. Her green eyes met his, unreadable but intent. Ethan gestured towards him like presenting evidence. "Caught in the act. Who better to plant a device than someone no one notices?" Derek spoke at last, his voice steady. "I didn't plant anything. I reported what I saw twice. Check the maintenance logs. My name's on the tickets." Victor Hale frowned, flipping through papers. "He's right. There are 2 logged reports under his ID." Ethan's smile thinned. "Clever. Log a complaint to build cover. But why would a janitor even notice anomalies in server equipment? Unless he knew what he was putting there." Sienna leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "What exactly are you accusing him of, Ethan?" Ethan spread his arms. "Corporate espionage. He's been sneaking into restricted areas, planting unauthorized hardware. This could explain the irregular data traffic we've been tracking for weeks." Derek's jaw tightened. "Or it could explain why someone like you wants to frame the janitor instead of looking at your own people." The words hung like a blade. Gasps rippled around the table. Mac shifted, placing a firm hand on Derek's arm, not aggressive but a signal to quiet down. Ethan's calm cracked for the briefest moment, then returned, polished and cold. "You see? Insolence. He's out of line." Derek's eyes never left him. "I'm not the one with a motive." For the first time, Sienna stood, breaking the tableau. Her presence filled the room. "Enough. If we're going to accuse, we need proof. Real proof." Ethan's gaze cut to her, icy. "And what? You'd take his word over mine?" Sienna didn't answer immediately. She looked at Derek again, seeing the steadiness in his eyes, the refusal to shrink. She remembered the sticky note Caleb had shown her earlier that day, with Derek's handwriting. "Don't confuse hard with impossible. A janitor who left wisdom on laptops instead of lies in servers." Jordan cleared his throat, nervous. "There is a way. We could check the access logs tied to the device's MAC address. It'll show who authenticated the panel last." Ethan's head snapped toward him, warning in his eyes. "We don't need to waste time." But Sienna cut him off. "Run the check." Tonight tension coiled tighter. Max stepped between Derek and the table as if expecting orders to remove him. Ethan seized the moment. "Security, escort him out until this is resolved." Mac hesitated, looking at Sienna. The room froze, waiting. This was the moment. Did she side with her powerful COO, her once lover, her board's favorite? Or did she trust the janitor who stood accused? The storm outside cracked with lightning, thunder rattling the glass. Inside, the air felt just as electric. Meanwhile, across town, Tasha balanced a tray at El Canto, sweat on her brow as the bar roared with late-night energy. Ray Dixon grew rowdy, slamming shots and laughing too loud. Lena slid in quickly, intercepting him with a sharper tone than Tasha could manage. "Cool it, Ray." "She's not your toy." Ray glared but backed down, muttering curses. Tasha's hand shook as she carried empties to the bar. Miguel Alvarez, the owner, caught her eye. "You okay, kid?" he asked. His rough voice carried genuine concern, shaped by years of running a bar where trouble walked in with every drink. "I'm fine," she lied, but later as she pocketed her tips, she wondered how long she could keep this double life hidden. Derek couldn't know. Not yet. Back in the Blue Spire, the conference room reached its boiling point. Mac's grip tightened slightly on Derek's arm, ready to move him, but waiting on Sienna's word. Ethan leaned forward, his smile sharp as glass. "Choose, Sienna. Do we let this janitor compromise everything we've built, or do we protect the company?" The clock ticked. The storm rolled. And in the center of it all, Derek Cole stood silent, the weight of truth on his shoulders, waiting to see if the woman who once looked through him would now look at him and believe. The storm outside had dulled to a drizzle, but inside the Blue Spire the air remained charged. The conference room lights gleamed across glass walls, as if they wanted to expose every lie. Ethan Ward stood tall at the head of the table, confident that his trap had snapped shut around Derek. The janitor waited with Mac's hand firm on his arm, and Sienna Lockhart, CEO in black sheath dress, stood caught between two worlds, one where she trusted the COO she had once loved, and one where she listened to the quiet janitor who had dared to look her in the eyes. Derek didn't plead. Instead, he said calmly, "Check my phone." His voice carried no desperation, only certainty. The room hushed. He pulled the device from his pocket and unlocked it with his thumb. Within his gallery were 3 sharp photographs of the mysterious device in the server racks, time-stamped before Jordan had ever done his inspection. Sienna's eyes flickered. She walked forward, heels clicking against marble, and took the phone from his hand. The images glowed under the fluorescent lights. "You didn't plant it," she murmured, loud enough for the room. "You documented it." Gasps and mutters rippled around the table. Victor Hale adjusted his glasses, uncertain. Diana Brooks leaned forward, studying the photo like it was a headline waiting to explode. Ethan's expression cracked, then smoothed into a grin that was all teeth. "Clever trick," he said. "Anyone can stage photos." But the fact remains, he was there. Sienna's voice sharpened. "So were you, Ethan, when you signed off on those quarterly reports, the ones with unexplained data traffic. Don't think I didn't notice." The words landed like stones. Ethan's jaw tightened. He realized the room was shifting. His old charm wasn't enough here, so he did what predators do, he recalculated. "Fine," he said smoothly. "If you won't handle this internally, we'll let the evidence speak. And when the real breach burns through our system tomorrow, don't say I didn't warn you who caused it." His pale eyes cut toward Derek with promise of war. He left the room with calculated calm, but inside his mind was already at work. He had allies outside the tower. By morning, Miami woke to heavy heat and restless skies. In a rundown apartment in Little Havana, 3 men huddled around laptops glowing green with code. They weren't office professionals. They were mercenaries of the digital world. The leader, Noah Briggs, 32, pale and wiry with unkempt blonde hair and tattoos of circuit patterns up his forearms, was a hacker for hire known in underground forums as Ghostline. He had grown up fostered through abusive homes, finding refuge only in stolen computers, and it had left him distrustful of authority but greedy for leverage. His companions, Manny Torres, short, stocky, Puerto Rican, a former IT dropout with nimble fingers, and Cal Parker, tall, lanky, black with dreadlocks tucked under a beanie, handled logistics and brute force attacks. Ethan Ward paid them through shell accounts. Their mission was clear: infiltrate Lockhart and Ward servers, scramble data trails, and pin the activity on the janitor who dared to challenge him. That same night, in El Canto Bar, the trouble bled into Tasha's world. The music pounded as she carried drinks across sticky floors. At one booth in the corner, the 3 hackers sat, posing as ordinary patrons. Noah hunched over his beer, tapping his phone like any distracted millennial. Manny cracked jokes too loudly, and Cal scanned the room with lazy disinterest. Tasha noticed them because Lena Cruz muttered, "Not these guys again." When Tasha asked why, Lena's sharp eyes narrowed. They're regulars, but not the good kind. Always on their laptops, always asking questions about Wi-Fi speeds and routers. Bad news, baby. As the night dragged on, one of the men, Manny, called Tasha over, flashing a 20 for a simple soda. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, grin a little too wide. "You a student?" "You look like one." Tasha nodded cautiously. "Yeah." "You into computers? Design? Stuff like that?" His tone was too curious, too pointed. Before she could answer, Lena swept in, grabbing the tray. "She's into tips, Chico. Drink your soda and leave her alone." Her protective tone snapped the tension, but Tasha's unease grew. She didn't know it yet, but she had brushed against the very men threatening her brother's life. Back at the Blue Spire, Sienna summoned Derek to her office. It was after hours again, the tower quiet except for the hum of elevators. Her office overlooked the bay, the city glittering below. She stood at the window, whiskey glass in hand, her silhouette sharp against the glass. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked without turning. "Because I'm a janitor," Derek replied. "No one listens to janitors." She faced him, green eyes burning. "I do now." He said nothing, but the truth was in the way he held her gaze. For the first time, Sienna felt the ground shift beneath her carefully built armor. Suddenly, Jordan Keller rushed in, pale and sweating. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. The system's crashing. Data corruption spreading fast." Sienna stiffened. "From where?" Jordan swallowed. "From inside. Looks like sabotage." Derek's jaw tightened. He didn't need to guess who was behind it. Ethan had made his move. The night stretched into chaos. Derek followed Jordan into the server room, where screens flashed error messages, code unraveling like threads in water. He crouched by the racks, steady hands tracing the flow of connections. Amid the mess, he spotted the new device glowing faintly, its signal stronger now. "This isn't just a bug," he said. "Someone's feeding poison into your system, and they'll blame me when it goes public." Sienna's voice was cold and sharp. "Not if I stand with you." But before Derek could reply, Mac, the guard, entered, holding a tablet with camera feeds. "Ms. Lockhart, look at this." On screen, Ethan meeting with Noah Briggs in a parking garage, grainy but clear enough to recognize faces. Sienna's stomach flipped. Proof, but proof that would take courage to use. Meanwhile, across town, Tasha ended her shift late. As she left El Canto, she saw Manny and Cal smoking outside, laughing too loud. She pulled her hoodie tight, slipping by unnoticed, or so she thought. Noah's eyes tracked her from the alley, calculating. He recognized her resemblance to Derek from earlier research, a weakness, an opportunity. Back at the tower, Derek typed commands with a speed that surprised Jordan. His knowledge flowed as if he'd never left school. He isolated the breach, traced packets bouncing through dummy servers, and found the signature of Ghostline embedded in the code. Sienna watched him, fascinated. "You're not just fixing my floors," she whispered. "I'm keeping my promise," he said. She tilted her head. "To me?" "No, to my sister. To make sure her world doesn't collapse like ours is about to." Something in her chest shifted at his words, something she hadn't felt in years. By dawn, the immediate crisis was contained, but Ethan was far from defeated. He still had bored allies and an arsenal of lies. And now, with Ghostline circling closer, the danger wasn't just corporate, it was personal. Derek returned home to find Tasha asleep on the couch, books sprawled around her. He didn't see the tension in her shoulders, the hidden tips folded into her backpack, or the shadows of 3 dangerous men who had already marked her. For the first time, the war he fought in the tower and the promise he held at home were on a collision course. The dawn sky over Miami bled orange and gray, clouds still swollen from last night's storm. From the top floors of the Blue Spire, the city looked deceptively calm, but inside, pressure coiled like a spring. Derek Cole walked beside Sienna Lockhart down the corridor toward the server room, his heart steady even as alarms blinked across monitors. She carried herself like a queen going to war. Tall, composed, her green eyes narrowed with focus. He pushed open the heavy door, and the humming racks inside sounded more like a heartbeat on edge than machinery. Ethan Ward was already there, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, as though he'd been working rather than orchestrating sabotage. He stood flanked by Jordan Keller, the IT head, whose face glistened with nervous sweat, and two security officers unfamiliar to Derek. These weren't Mac's men. Both were tall, muscular, wearing ill-fitting black suits with earpieces that screamed private contractors. Ethan spread his hands like a gracious host. Sienna. Derek. You couldn't resist a late-night visit. His voice oozed false calm. Careful, the system is fragile right now. Sienna's heels clicked as she stepped inside. Cut the performance, Ethan. We know about the hackers. We have footage of your meeting. A flicker of irritation crossed Ethan's blue eyes, quickly masked with a smirk. Footage without context means nothing. What matters is who controls this company at the end of today. And it won't be you. Derek's gaze sharpened. He noticed a small black device pulsing at the back of a rack, identical to the one he had photographed. Noah Briggs's work. He also saw that Jordan avoided looking at it, guilt carved into his expression. Before Derek could move, one of the private guards stepped forward. Cole Matthews, mid-30s ex-cop with a shaved head and a broken nose that had never set properly, radiated intimidation. His partner, Andre Lewis, a bulky man with a scar under his eye, stood silent but ready, his posture screaming ex-military. These men weren't here to keep peace, they were here to keep Ethan safe. You've got two choices, Ethan said, voice rising. Walk away quietly, Sienna, or get dragged out when the system collapses under this man's supposed sabotage. Imagine the headlines, CEO covers for janitor while company burns. Sienna's jaw set. Derek, standing steady beside her, spoke first. The difference is, I can prove what you're doing. He held up his phone, pulling up logs from the night before. Lines of code showed the device routing traffic through ghost servers. These aren't my fingerprints. They're yours and your hackers. Ethan laughed, cold and hollow. A janitor with evidence. How convenient. The tension cracked when the door burst open. Mac Castillo strode in, uniform crisp, his deep brown eyes hard. Not your men, Ethan, he growled, nodding at the contractors. This is my building, my jurisdiction, Cole Matthews sneered. Orders are orders. But Mac didn't blink. He was outnumbered, but the steadiness in his stance made Derek's chest tighten with respect. While the confrontation brewed, Derek slipped past the guards, crouching by the rack. His fingers moved with precision, disconnecting the device, rerouting cables. On the screen above, the network's heartbeat began to steady, green replacing red. Ethan lunged forward, but Sienna stepped into his path, her voice cut like glass. It's over. You wanted to destroy me, but all you've destroyed is your career. Jordan, sweating, broke under the weight. He paid them, he blurted. The hackers. He told me to look away. Silence slammed the room. Ethan's face twisted, fury breaking through the polish. Pathetic, he spat at Jordan. Then his gaze snapped to Sienna. You'll regret crossing me. You think replacing me will save you? Sienna's eyes burned green fire. No, Ethan. Standing with the right people, Mac motioned, and real building security swarmed in men loyal to him, not Ethan. Cole Matthews and Andre were disarmed and escorted out. Ethan resisted until the last second, his threats echoing down the hall, but the sight of handcuffs snapping around his wrists was the first crack in his empire. When the chaos cleared, only Derek, Sienna, and Mac remained. The server hummed, stable again. Sienna turned to Derek, studying him as though seeing him for the first time. Her voice softened. You make me realize I don't have to be cold to survive. I need someone who dares to stand beside me, even when the floor is on fire. Derek wiped his hands on his coveralls, eyes steady. I'm no executive. I just do what's right. Sienna's lips curved into something almost tender. Which is exactly why I'm offering you a role. Director of Technology Security. Build an integrity system from the inside out. I trust you more than I trust anyone in this tower." For a moment, Derek hesitated. Then he nodded once. "I'll do it. But on one condition." Her brows arched. "Condition?" "My sister. She's studying, but money's tight. If you really want me here, make sure she never has to choose between classes and rent." A flicker of surprise crossed Sienna's face. Then something warmer. "Consider it done. Full scholarship. She'll never have to worry again." 2 weeks later, life in Miami moved on, but different. Ethan was in federal custody, facing charges for fraud and sabotage. Jordan resigned quietly. The board rallied around Sienna, impressed with her decisive handling of the crisis. And Derek Cole, once invisible, now walked the Blue Spire in a new suit, not flashy, just gray and fitted, his nameplate on a door reading Director of Technology Security. He still carried the quiet humility of the janitor he had been, but his spine seemed straighter, his presence undeniable. At FIU, Tasha opened an email and stared at it in disbelief. Lockhart Scholarship awarded in full. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered her brother's name. That night, she told him the truth about the bar job. He listened, hurt, but calm, then hugged her close. "No more secrets, Tash. We've got a future now." On a Friday evening, Derek found himself back on the executive floor. Sienna stood by the window of her office, the city glowing beneath her. She turned when he entered, wearing a crimson blouse that caught the light, her hair loose and tumbling over her shoulders. "Funny," she said with a wry smile. "A few weeks ago, you were scrubbing my floors. Now you're guarding my company." Derek chuckled softly. "Floors don't judge." "People do. I'm still getting used to that." She stepped closer, green eyes locking with his. The air between them thickened, not with tension this time, but with something more dangerous. Desire edged with respect. "We're not there yet," she said quietly. "But maybe one day." Derek nodded. "One day's enough." Outside, Miami pulsed with heat and neon. Inside, in the glow of the Blue Spire, two people stood on the edge of something new. Not quite love, but something with the power to grow. The janitor was gone. The man remained. This story reminds us that titles and appearances do not define a person's worth. Integrity, courage, and keeping promises to the people we love are what truly shape our lives. In everyday life, it is easy to feel unseen or underestimated. But like Derek, we all have the power to rise when it matters most. If this message touched your heart, please share this story, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel so more people can be encouraged. May God bless everyone watching, and if you believe in the power of second chances, write Amen in the comments.